Our next guest is an internationally recognized speaker, recipient of numerous awards, founder of Nazizwe Consulting, which aims to bring groups together to learn from and celebrate their differences and acknowledge their shared humanity, and is the daughter of South African Archbishop Desmond and Nomalizo Leah Tutu. Please join me in welcoming Naomi Tutu.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon? No, not yet. Oh, I am so tired. See, you all are young. So, good morning. Well, I think Jorge had said to you that your greeting of him was not that hot. I thought he had warmed you up by now. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. When I first found out that I was going to be speaking after him, I was a little bit upset because I could see that this was a young, passionate speaker, and then what was I going to say to follow up on the great things that he had to say? But then after I heard him speak, I realized that, in fact, it was right that he spoke ahead of me, because the poem that I have chosen to be the theme for my presentation is really about Jorge and other young people like him. The poem is one that I was introduced to a few years ago by Donna McCover, and it is called "I Will Not Die an Unlived Life." As I said, you're young, I'm not, I need my reading glasses. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live, so that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. That which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. I think that is the core of what Jorge was telling us about his life, but I also think it is the core of NYLC and this particular conference, and it is, for me, one of the things that leads and guides me in my work around peace and justice. Because if we are going to be those who change the world, we have to be those willing to take risks. We have to be those willing to open our hearts and our heads to new ideas, to new people, to new opportunities. And it's not always easy. You know, it is often very easy to live in our comfort zones, to know those people that we know, to be comfortable in those situations in which we are comfortable, to look at those who are different from us in some way as maybe at the worst threatening or at the least uninteresting. And yet, if we say we are struggling for a world of justice and peace, we have to be those who look and see difference as opportunity, who look and see difference as a chance to learn, as an opportunity to risk our hearts. I know that many of you tomorrow will be working on the day of service, and whenever I have the opportunity to talk to people about working with others, I like to emphasize, I hope that you go into this process knowing that those you are going to be working with and for are human beings. Now, I know that sounds like, well, really, we're not dumb. We know that we are working with human beings. But the reality is that so often in our lives, we approach people with labels, and not as fully human. That we approach people as though we know them because we know something about them. I know that I do that often and often in my own life. A few years ago, I was asked to speak at Vanderbilt University, where I'm now a student, about the 21st century and what race and gender was going to look like in the 21st century. And now race and gender are my passions. So as I stood up and started speaking, I was basically going to town, as they say, talking about how I saw the 21st century as going to be the century where women and people of color would step up and take the lead politically, socially, economically, change the way that we structure our society completely. And at the end of my presentation, there was a time for question and answers. And the very first person who stood up, I looked back there and I thought, oh my Lord, angry white man, oh jeez. Why would I have to deal with an angry white man first off? And so he stood up and he was an angry white man. But he was not the angry white man I was expecting. He was a young man who had spent much of his life on the streets, homeless, and other times in his life in mental health facilities in Tennessee, and saw himself as an advocate for those people, the homeless and those with mental issues. And so he said to me, he was angry because he said, how can you be here giving this particular presentation in this place where the people you are talking about are not welcome? And so we had a conversation back and forth about that, and eventually the moderator had to ask him to sit down to give other people an opportunity to ask questions. And so the next morning when I got to my office at Tennessee State, he was standing outside my office with an envelope. And he handed me the envelope and walked away. I opened the envelope, and in it was, he said, I really enjoyed our conversation yesterday, but I'd like it to carry on. Would you join me for a cup of coffee? And he left his phone number. So I called him, and the next week we met for a cup of coffee, and we sat and chatted for a couple of hours, and we had a great time. And so we decided, let's meet in a couple more weeks, and we met a couple of weeks later and had coffee once again and chatted and had a great time. And then we said, well, let's meet for lunch, because then we have a longer time. So we met for lunch, and we had a great time. And then the apartment that he was living in, he lost that apartment. And so he moved in and lived with me and my family for about a month. And now he is my son's Uncle Carl, who challenges him and is part of the reason that I'm in divinity school now. And I think to myself, if I had closed my heart, if I had decided and kept with the decision of who I knew that man was when he first stood up, how much would I have lost in my life? So if we say we are about building a better world, we have to start that building with how we approach others. And one of the biggest lessons that Carl taught me was about being the recipient of service. In Nashville, we have something called Room at the Inn, which I believe is now spread nationally, where churches in the winter open their facilities for the homeless. And Carl told me about his experiences there and said, room at the inn is like the 5-star homeless accommodation, because we get to those churches and they give us this great dinner. Sometimes they even give us a steak dinner. And while we're there, they will have people to give us clothes, so we can have clothes swaps. And sometimes they'll have a barber. They'll have all kinds of people ready there to offer us service. And it is great. And the church people serve us this wonderful dinner. But I walk into that church as a homeless man, and I walk out of that church as a homeless man. Because nobody in that church, while they're serving us our meal, bothers to ask my name or know my story. So I have a wonderful meal. I sometimes get new clothes, but I very rarely have a human connection. So as we go out to serve, remember that those whom you are serving are human beings with stories that can enlighten and inspire you. So that tomorrow, when you go out as part of your service, get to know the name and story of at least one of the people you are going to be working with. If we are those who believe in peace, if we are those who strive for justice, then we have to be those who recognize difference. We have to be those who don't pretend that there is no difference amongst us. One of the people that I now work with, Rose, when we first started working together, we were talking about the work we were going to be doing on race and gender issues. And I'm not even sure how it came up, but, at one point in the conversation, I said to her something about, working with a black woman. She's white, by the way. So I said something to her about working with a black woman, and she said to me, "Oh, I don't think of you as black." And I stopped the conversation. She says I stopped the conversation and basically tried to strangle her. I say I stopped the conversation, I counted to 10, and very politely said, "What do you mean you don't think of me as black?" And I'm here, she's not, so you know who's telling the truth. But I said, how can we work together on issues of justice if we start off with you denying part of who I am? How can you not think of me as black? Because I know I'm black. I wake up in the morning, I look in the mirror, and I think, whoa, that's a fine black woman staring back at me. So, for you to say you don't see that is not an empowering place. It is not a good place to start a relationship. It's not a good place to change the world and its view on race and racism. For me, our differences are what make this world such an amazing place. Our differences are the things that offer us opportunities that we would not have otherwise. Have you ever heard somebody say something like, children are so wonderful. Children don't notice difference. Have you ever heard that? I've heard it thousands and thousands of times. And the first thing I think is, you don't know any children, first of all. Because anybody who has been around any child will tell you that children notice difference. And children make it clear they notice difference. And they don't care when and where or how loud their voice is when they're noticing the difference. Right? But for children, noticing difference is about an opportunity to learn. And that's what it needs to be for us. It needs to be that we take the differences we meet, be they difference of race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, whatever difference we are exposed to, and take that as an opportunity to learn a different way of looking at the world, a different way of experiencing life in our world. One of my favorite experiences with children and difference was I was sitting on a plane and a couple came on with a young boy, and at that time I had shaved all my hair off. And as they came by, the little boy stopped and was like, "Why doesn't that woman have any hair?" And his parents are like, "Come on, Johnny." And I'm thinking, this child is going to grow up terrified of bald women. So I have to stop this right away. And I was like, no, it's fine. I was like, no, the reason I don't have any hair is because I hate combing my hair. And I saw his eyes light up because he's thinking, right, oh, you can do that? If you hate combing your hair? Mom. And they probably wish they had kept on walking. But that is how we need to deal with difference. It is that chance to see a different part of our world. It is a chance to experience something that we might not otherwise experience. It is an opportunity to expand our world. So as we struggle for peace, we have to be those who open our eyes and our hearts to those who are different to us in whatever way. As we are those who strive for justice, we have to be those who are willing to take that leap of faith that we are dealing with fellow human beings, that we are dealing with other people who, just like us, different though they may be, dream of a better life, dream of peace, dream of justice, dream of opportunities for themselves and for their children, for quality education, for health care, for safe communities. And as we take that leap, then we seek to find what is our particular role in making that change. See, Jorge and I have kind of found our role in that, as we said, we both like talking. And that's one of the easiest roles. But whatever the role, the gift that you bring to this struggle for a peaceful and just world, embrace it and share it. Because we all are waiting We all need your gift, your passion, your belief in justice and peace. I ask that you too be those who make sure that that which came to you as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to you as blossom you pass on as fruit. Thank you.